I was sitting at my own Thanksgiving table when my daughter-in-law stood up, clinked her glass, and announced to the entire family that I was losing my mind and could no longer be trusted. Everyone, I need to say something important. Harold and I have been very worried about Miriam lately. She's been forgetting things, getting confused, making poor decisions. We think it's time we all acknowledge that she needs help, real help. We can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's clearly not. 23 people. My children, my grandchildren, cousins, in-laws, all sitting at the table I'd set, eating food I'd cooked in the house I owned. All of them stopped eating, stopped talking, turned to look at me, waiting for me to defend myself, to argue, to prove I wasn't declining. I didn't say a word, just looked at Valerie, then at my son Harold, then at each face around the table, watching them choose whether to believe her or me. "Mom," Harold's voice was careful. "Valerie's just concerned. We all are. You have been a bit forgetful lately." I still didn't speak, just watched. "Like last week," Valerie continued, emboldened by Harold's support. "You forgot you'd invited us for dinner. We showed up and you seemed completely surprised. That's not normal, Miriam." My younger son, Kenneth, spoke up. "Is that true, Mom? You forgot they were coming." I could have explained, could have told them I'd never invited them. Valerie had invited herself and then claimed I'd forgotten. Could have defended myself. Instead, I set down my fork, folded my napkin, stood up from my own table, and walked out of my dining room without a single word. I heard them behind me, surprised voices. "Where's she going? Is she okay?" See, this is exactly what we're talking about, inappropriate reactions. I went to my bedroom, closed the door, locked it, and I listened to my family discuss my mental decline in my own dining room while eating my own food. That was the moment I understood what was really happening. This wasn't concern. This was a performance, a public declaration designed to establish a narrative in front of witnesses. Miriam is declining. Miriam can't be trusted. Miriam needs help managing her life. They thought I was broken, confused, too far gone to recognize what they were doing. That was their first mistake. Now listen, before I tell you what happened when I let my family believe I was losing my mind, before I show you what silence can do when an entire family turns against you, I need you to do something. If you're watching this and you've ever been accused of something you didn't do while everyone watched, hit subscribe right now. Comment where you're from, because what happened when I watched them turn on me without saying a word? You need to hear every second. Turn on notifications. This goes places none of them saw coming. They stayed in my dining room for another hour. I could hear them through the door, discussing me, my future, what needed to happen. She can't live alone anymore. We need to start looking at facilities. Someone needs to take control of her finances before she makes mistakes. This house is too much for her to maintain. Every sentence was about taking something from me, my independence, my home, my money, my choices. And every sentence was delivered in a tone of loving concern, like they were doing me a favor by planning to dismantle my life. When they finally left, after cleaning my kitchen and taking my leftover food so it wouldn't go to waste, Harold knocked on my bedroom door. "Mom, can we talk?" I didn't answer. "Mom, I know you're upset, but Valerie's right. We are worried about you. You're 74. You live alone in this big house. You're forgetting things. Mom, we love you. We just want to make sure you're safe." I didn't open the door, didn't respond. After 10 minutes, he left. And I sat in my locked bedroom, thinking about what I just witnessed. A coordinated attack, at Thanksgiving dinner, in front of the whole family, designed to establish publicly that I was incompetent. Not a private conversation expressing concern. A public declaration with 23 witnesses who could later testify. We all saw it. Miriam was clearly declining. She couldn't even defend herself. That was the moment I decided something important. I wasn't going to defend myself. Not yet, not to them. I was going to watch, to document, to let them show me exactly what they were planning. And my silence would be the tool that made them reveal everything. The next morning, Valerie showed up at 8 a.m., let herself in with a key I didn't know she had. "Miriam, we need to talk about yesterday. You walking out in the middle of Thanksgiving was very concerning. It shows exactly the kind of impulsive, inappropriate behavior we're worried about." I was in my kitchen having coffee. I looked at her, didn't speak. "Miriam, please talk to me. This silent treatment is childish." I sipped my coffee, watched her over the rim of my cup. "Fine, if you won't engage, I'll just say what needs to be said. Harold and I have decided you need to see a doctor, a specialist, to evaluate your cognitive function. We've already made an appointment for next Tuesday." I didn't argue. I remembered. That I hadn't forgotten their dinner visit last week. Valerie had sent a text at 5 p.m. saying, "We're coming over for dinner tonight," without asking if that worked for me. When I'd said I didn't have enough food prepared, she'd claimed I'd invited them days ago. I'd known then it was a lie, but I'd let it go, hadn't wanted conflict. Now I understood. That hadn't been a miscommunication. That had been a setup, creating an incident of forgetfulness that she could reference later. How many other setups had there been that I dismissed as misunderstandings? "The appointment is Tuesday at 2 p.m., Valerie continued. "Harold will pick you up at 1:30. Please be ready. And Miriam, don't be difficult about this. We're trying to help you." She left, and I sat in my kitchen thinking about that word. Difficult. Translation: don't resist what we're planning. I thought about the appointment. A cognitive evaluation. If I went and performed poorly, they'd have medical documentation of decline. If I refused to go, they'd say I was being uncooperative and irrational. Either way, they won, unless I changed the game entirely. So I made a decision. I'd go to their appointment, but I'd also make my own appointments, with my own doctors, my own evaluations, on my own terms. That afternoon, I called my primary care physician, Dr. Ellen Saunders. "Ellen, I need a comprehensive evaluation. Cognitive function, mental status, everything. My family is claiming I'm declining. I need documentation that I'm not. Are you experiencing any memory problems or confusion?" "No, but I need proof of that before my family manufactures proof that I am." Ellen scheduled me for the next day. Full evaluation, memory tests, mental status examination, everything. Then I called my financial advisor, Graham Mitchell. "Graham, I need documentation of all my financial decisions for the past 2 years. Every transaction, every choice. I need proof I've been managing my money competently." "Is there a problem?" "My family is building a case that I'm incompetent. I need to build a case that I'm not." Graham said he'd have everything ready by Friday. I was preparing, building evidence, creating documentation. But I still wasn't speaking to them, wasn't defending myself, wasn't giving them anything to twist or use against me. That was the silent strategy. Let them make mistakes while I built my defense. Tuesday came. Harold arrived at 1:30 to take me to the appointment Valerie had made. I was ready, dressed, waiting. We drove in silence. Harold tried to make conversation. "Mom, I know you're angry, but we're doing this because we love you." I looked out the window, said nothing. "Mom, the silent treatment isn't helping. It's actually making us more worried. People who are thinking clearly can communicate." I didn't take the bait, didn't argue that I was thinking clearly, just stayed quiet. The appointment was with a Dr. Raymond Cook. I'd never heard of him. Harold had clearly chosen him specifically. Dr. Cook's office was in a building that specialized in elder care and geriatric psychiatry. The waiting room was full of elderly people, some clearly experiencing dementia. Harold checked me in. "She's here for the cognitive evaluation. I'm her son, Harold. I'm the one who made the appointment." We sat in the waiting room. I still hadn't spoken, just observed everything. After 20 minutes, a nurse called my name. Harold stood up to come with me. The nurse looked at him. "Family members wait here during the evaluation." "But I need to provide background information." "The doctor will speak with you after if necessary." "Right now, We evaluate the patient alone. Harold sat back down, frustrated. I followed the nurse to an exam room. She took my vitals. Then Dr. Cook came in. Mrs. Crane, I'm Dr. Cook. Your son is concerned about some memory and cognitive issues. Can you tell me what you've been experiencing? I looked at him, thought carefully about my answer. Then I spoke, first words in 4 days. I haven't been experiencing any cognitive issues. My daughter-in-law made a public announcement at Thanksgiving that I'm declining. My son made this appointment without asking if I wanted it. Dr. Cook, I'm here under pressure, not because I need evaluation. I see. Well, let's do some baseline testing anyway. Can you tell me today's date? Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. And where are we right now? Your office at 4800 Medical Plaza Drive, 3rd floor, Suite 304. Who is the current president? I answered correctly. Then he moved to memory testing, recall lists, problem-solving tasks, comprehension questions. I performed perfectly on everything, every single test. After 45 minutes, Dr. Cook set down his clipboard. Mrs. Crane, your cognitive function is excellent. There's no evidence of dementia, confusion, or impairment. Your memory is age-appropriate, your reasoning is sound, your judgment is intact. Will you put that in writing? Of course, I'll provide a written evaluation. Mrs. Crane, can I ask, why do you think your family believes you're declining? Because they want to believe it. They want to establish that I need help so they can provide that help, which will give them control over my life and my assets. That's a serious accusation. It's an accurate one. Dr. Cook, I have my own evaluation scheduled with my longtime physician. I came to this appointment because refusing would be used as evidence of irrationality, but I'm documenting everything. Smart. After the appointment, Dr. Cook spoke with Harold. I sat in the waiting room listening. Your mother's cognitive function is completely normal. There's no evidence of decline. But she's been so forgetful. I can only evaluate what I observe and test. And what I observed is a sharp, competent 74-year-old woman with excellent mental faculties. Harold was quiet for a moment. Could you test her again? Maybe she was just having a good day. Mr. Crane, your mother doesn't need further evaluation. She's fine. On the drive home, Harold was tense. I don't understand. Valerie said you've been declining for months. I didn't respond, just looked out the window. Mom talked to me, say something. Silence. Fine, don't talk. But Mom, we're not going to stop worrying just because one doctor says you're fine. That was the moment I understood how deep this went. They didn't want proof I was competent. They wanted proof I wasn't. And when they didn't get it, they dismissed the results and looked for other ways to build their case. This wasn't about my welfare. This was about control. The next day, I had my own evaluation with Dr. Saunders. She'd known me for 18 years, knew my baseline. She did even more extensive testing than Dr. Cook. Cognitive function, mental status, medical examination, everything. Her conclusion, Miriam, you're as sharp as you've ever been. There's no decline, no impairment, no reason for concern. Put it in writing with as much detail as possible. Are you expecting a fight? I'm expecting my family to try to take control of my life. I need ammunition to stop them. Dr. Saunders wrote a 4-page evaluation, detailed test results, clear conclusion, no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment. I took that evaluation and put it in a safe place. Evidence, documentation, proof. But I still didn't show it to Harold or Valerie, didn't defend myself to them, just kept watching, kept silent, kept letting them reveal their plans. 1 week after Thanksgiving, Harold and Valerie showed up at my house together, unannounced. Mom, we need to talk. Can we come in? I stepped aside, let them enter. We sat in my living room. I waited. Mom, Dr. Cook's evaluation was surprising, but we're still concerned. One evaluation isn't enough to prove everything's fine. I didn't respond. Valerie spoke up. Miriam, we've been talking to a specialist, an elder care consultant. He suggested that even if you're cognitively fine now, this house is too much for you. You're 74, living alone. What if something happens? What if you fall? What if you have a medical emergency? I looked at her, silent. We think you should consider moving to a senior community, somewhere with support services, activities, other people your age. You'd be safer there. I didn't argue, I observed. This was the next move. If they couldn't prove cognitive decline, they'd argue I was physically unsafe living alone. There's a really nice place called Meadowbrook Village, Harold said. We've already toured it. It's clean, modern, has great amenities. Mom, we really think you should at least look at it. I stood up, walked to my front door, opened it. The message was clear. Leave. Mom, you're being unreasonable. I gestured to the open door. They left, both frustrated and confused. And I closed the door, locked it, and went to my computer to research Meadowbrook Village. It was an assisted living facility, not independent senior housing, assisted living, for people who needed help with daily tasks. They weren't suggesting I downsize. They were suggesting I move to a facility for people who couldn't manage alone. I documented that, printed their brochure, added it to my evidence file. That evening, Kenneth called, my younger son. Mom, Harold told me you walked out on them again today. What's going on? I didn't answer. Mom, are you there? Can you hear me? I hung up. He called back. I didn't answer. The silence was working. They were getting desperate, making mistakes, escalating. 2 days later, I received a letter from an attorney named Clifford Barnes. Dear Mrs. Crane, I represent your son Harold Crane regarding concerns about your welfare and ability to manage your affairs. Mr. Crane has consulted with me about potentially filing for guardianship to ensure you receive appropriate care and supervision. We would prefer to handle this cooperatively. If you're willing to work with your family to make appropriate living arrangements and accept help with financial management, guardianship proceedings may not be necessary. Please contact my office within 10 days to discuss options. Sincerely, Clifford Barnes-esque. Guardianship, there it was, the endgame. They wanted legal control over my life, over my decisions, over my money. I read the letter 3 times, then I added it to my evidence file. And I still didn't call them, didn't defend myself, didn't engage. I just documented and waited. 3 days later, something happened that showed me exactly what Valerie had been planning all along. My neighbor, Helen Prout, knocked on my door. Miriam, I need to tell you something. A woman came to my house yesterday asking questions about you. What woman? She said she was from social services doing a wellness check. She asked if I'd noticed you struggling, forgetting things, seeming confused. She asked if your house looked well-maintained, if I'd seen signs of self-neglect. What did you tell her? I told her you seem perfectly fine, that you maintain your house beautifully, and I've never seen any signs of confusion. Miriam, I don't think she was actually from social services. I think someone hired her to gather information against you. I thanked Helen, and I thought about what she'd told me. Someone was interviewing my neighbors, building a case, gathering evidence of my decline. Valerie, it had to be Valerie. She was systematic, organized. She'd orchestrate exactly this kind of campaign. I called Helen back. If anyone else comes asking questions, would you document it? Write down what they ask, what they claim to be, everything. Of course, Miriam, what's happening? My family is trying to take control of my life, and I'm building a case to stop them. Over the next week, 3 more neighbors reported similar visits, someone claiming to be from various agencies, asking leading questions about my competence. Each neighbor documented it. Each one gave me written statements saying I seemed completely fine. More evidence, more documentation. But I still didn't confront Harold or Valerie, didn't call the attorney, didn't defend myself directly. I just kept watching, kept documenting, kept letting them dig themselves deeper. 2 weeks after the attorney's letter, Harold and Valerie showed up with Kenneth. All three of them. "Mom, we need to talk, all of us. This has gone on long enough." I let them in. We sat in my living room. Kenneth spoke first. "Mom, we're all worried. You haven't been yourself. The silence, the isolation, refusing to engage with us. This isn't normal behavior." I looked at each of them, waiting. "Mom, we've consulted with multiple professionals," Harold said. "They all agree your behavior suggests someone who's struggling and needs help. Even if the cognitive tests came back fine, your actions show poor judgment." I didn't respond, didn't defend my actions, just observed. "We're giving you a choice," Valerie said. "You can work with us cooperatively, move to Meadowbrook, let Harold help manage your finances, accept that you need support. Or we'll file for emergency guardianship. We don't want to do that, but we will if necessary to protect you." Still silence from me. "Mom, say something." Kenneth's voice was rising. "This is your family trying to help you. Why are you being so stubborn?" I stood up, walked to my bedroom, came back with a folder. I handed it to Kenneth, not to Harold or Valerie, to Kenneth. Then I spoke, first words to them in 2 weeks. "Read it, all of it, then decide if I'm the one who needs help." Kenneth opened the folder. Inside, Dr. Cook's evaluation, Dr. Saunders' evaluation, Graham's financial documentation, neighbor statements, the attorney's letter, the Meadowbrook brochure highlighting assisted living services. Everything, every piece of evidence I'd been collecting. Kenneth read it all. His face changed as he went through each document. "Mom, you're not declining at all." "No." "Then why have you been silent? Why didn't you defend yourself?" "Because everything I said would be twisted, used against me, so I said nothing, and I let them show me who they really are." Harold reached for the folder. Kenneth held it away from him. "Harold, did you know Mom had Dr. Saunders do an evaluation too? It says the same thing as Dr. Cook's. She's completely competent. That doesn't change the fact that she needs help." "Help with what? Her finances are managed perfectly. Her house is immaculate. Her neighbors all say she's fine. Harold, there's a letter in here from an attorney threatening guardianship. Did you really consult a guardianship attorney?" "We were exploring options." "You were planning to take control of Mom's life. And Valerie, what's this about someone interviewing neighbors claiming to be from social services?" Valerie's face flushed. "I hired someone to do a wellness assessment. It's standard procedure." "It's building a false case. You were gathering ammunition to use against Mom." That was the moment everything shifted. Kenneth saw it, saw what I'd been seeing, saw that this wasn't concern, this was a campaign. And I'd let it happen, without saying a word, just documented everything and waited for someone else to see the truth. Harold and Valerie left shortly after, both furious, both knowing they'd been exposed. Kenneth stayed. "Mom, why didn't you tell me what was happening?" "Because I needed to see who was on which side. I needed to know who I could trust." "You can trust me, I swear. Mom, this is insane. What are they really after?" "Control, money, power. I don't know exactly. But Kenneth, that folder is just the beginning. I have more documentation. And I'm going to need your help with what comes next." "What comes next?" I pulled out another folder, this one thicker. Now I stop watching, now I act. Inside that folder was something I discovered 3 days ago. Something that explained everything. Something that was going to destroy Harold and Valerie completely. But before I could show Kenneth, before I could explain what I'd found, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Helen Prout, my neighbor. When I answered, her voice was shaking. "Miriam, call the fire department. Your shed is on fire, and I saw someone running from your backyard right before it started." Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. By the time the fire department arrived, my storage shed was completely engulfed. The shed where I kept 42 years of documents, tax records, financial papers, property deeds, family photos, everything. I stood in my backyard, watching it burn, while firefighters worked to keep the flames from spreading to my house. Kenneth stood beside me. Mom, who would do this? I didn't answer, but I knew. I'd seen Helen's security camera footage on my phone while the firefighters worked. A figure in dark clothing, running from my shed, through my back gate, into a car parked 2 streets over. A car I recognized, Valerie's silver sedan. The fire chief approached after they'd put it out. Mrs. Crane, this was definitely arson, accelerant used, deliberate ignition. We'll be filing a report with the police. I have security camera footage from my neighbor showing who did it. Then you should provide that to the investigating officer. Detective Marcus Shaw arrived an hour later. I showed him Helen's footage. The figure was clear enough. Size and build matching Valerie, running from my shed moments before the fire started, getting into Valerie's car. Mrs. Crane, can you think of any reason someone would want to destroy your shed? Yes, my son and daughter-in-law have been trying to gain control of my life and assets. I've been documenting everything they've done. Most of that documentation was in that shed. Birth certificates, marriage certificates, property records, financial documents going back decades. Everything that would prove I own what I own and that I'm competent to manage it. Kenneth spoke up. Detective, my brother Harold and his wife Valerie have been running a campaign to have Mom declared incompetent. They threatened guardianship, hired people to interview neighbors gathering false information. Everything Mom's saying is documented. I showed Detective Shaw the folder Kenneth had been reading, the evaluations, the attorney's letter, the neighbor statements. This is elder abuse, Detective Shaw said. Financial exploitation, and now arson to destroy evidence. Mrs. Crane, I need you to tell me everything. I told him everything. The Thanksgiving announcement, the manufactured forgetfulness incidents, the doctor appointments, the attorney's threat, the neighbor interviews, all of it. And you have proof of all this. I have copies. I kept duplicates of everything important in my house. The shed had originals and older documents, but I scanned the critical papers months ago. I've been careful. That was the truth. I'd been systematically scanning and digitizing important documents for years. Cloud storage, external hard drives, multiple backups. The shed burning destroyed originals, but the information still existed. I just wasn't going to tell Harold and Valerie that yet. Detective Shaw took extensive notes. I'll need copies of everything you have. And Mrs. Crane, I need to ask, do you feel safe in your home tonight? Yes, I have Kenneth here, and I'm installing security cameras tomorrow. Good. I'll be in touch after we investigate the fire and review the footage. After Detective Shaw left, Kenneth and I sat in my living room. The smell of smoke hung in the air even inside the house. Mom, they tried to burn your evidence. They're desperate. I know, which means I need to move faster than I'd planned. I pulled out the second folder, the one I'd been about to show Kenneth before Helen called about the fire. What's this? This is what I found 3 days ago. This is why they're really doing all of this. Inside the folder were financial records, not mine, Harold and Valerie's. Bank statements, credit card statements, loan documents, all obtained legally through sources I'd cultivated carefully. Kenneth read through them, his face growing paler with each page. They're in debt, serious debt. $340,000, credit cards, personal loans, a second mortgage on their house that's underwater. Kenneth, they're drowning financially. How did you get these? I have friends, people who know people. When Harold started acting strange 6 months ago, I started investigating. I wanted to understand what was motivating this sudden concern about my welfare. Kenneth kept reading. Mom, there's a loan here from someone named Victor Dupree for $80,000, with terms that, Mom, this looks like a loan shark. It is. Victor Dupree isn't a legitimate lender. He's a criminal who loans money at illegal interest rates. Harold borrowed $80,018 months ago. He's been paying 25% monthly interest. He's already paid back over $100,000 and still owes the full principal plus penalties. Jesus, how deep are they? Deep enough that they need my money to survive. My house is worth $675,000. My savings and investments total about $520,000. If they could get guardianship, they could sell my house, access my accounts, and clear their debts, with money left over. So this whole thing, the incompetence claims, the doctor visits, the guardianship threat, it's all to steal from you to pay off their debts. Yes. Mom, you have to take this to the police. I will, but Kenneth, I need to do something first. I need to make sure they can't hurt me. That means protecting my assets before they try something else. That night while Kenneth stayed in my guest room, I made calls. To Graham, my financial advisor. To my bank. To my attorney, not the one Harold had contacted, but my own attorney, Diane Chen, who'd handled my estate planning for years. By morning, I'd moved my assets, transferred accounts, changed passwords, added security protocols requiring in-person verification for any major transactions. I also did something else, something I'd been planning since Thanksgiving. I changed my will. The old will split everything between Harold and Kenneth equally. The new will left everything to Kenneth, with a specific provision. I am not leaving anything to my son Harold because of his attempts to manipulate me, steal from me, and falsely claim I am incompetent for financial gain. This is not due to any mental impairment on my part. This is a conscious choice made with full mental capacity. I had Diane add a no-contest clause. If Harold challenged the will, he'd get nothing, not even the small keepsake bequests. Miriam, are you sure about this? Diane asked. Disinheriting a child is serious. I'm sure. Harold tried to have me declared incompetent so he could steal from me. He's been lying about my mental state for months. And now someone, probably his wife, burned my shed to destroy evidence. I'm not leaving him anything. Then we'll make this ironclad. 2 days after the fire, Detective Shaw called with an update. Mrs. Crane, we've analyzed the security footage. The figure is definitely consistent with Valerie Crane's build and height. We've also found evidence at the scene matching accelerant purchased from a hardware store near their home. We have security footage from that store showing Valerie purchasing the accelerant 2 days before the fire. Are you arresting her? We're bringing her in for questioning. Mrs. Crane, based on what you've told me about the financial exploitation pattern, I've also contacted the district attorney's office. They're interested in the elder abuse angle. This could be criminal charges beyond just the arson. Good. There's something else. We ran a background check on Victor Dupree, the loan shark you mentioned. He's connected to some dangerous people. Mrs. Crane, if your son owes him money and can't pay, you might be in more danger than just from your family. That was something I hadn't fully considered. If Harold couldn't pay Victor, and Victor knew Harold's mother had substantial assets, I might become a target. What should I do? Install those security cameras. Consider a security system. And Mrs. Crane, don't be alone in the house. Keep someone with you. Kenneth moved in that day. Temporarily, he said, but we both knew it might be longer. We installed cameras. Front door, back door, driveway, backyard, everywhere. And we waited. 3 days after the fire, Valerie was arrested. Arson, destruction of property. The bail was set high enough that Harold had to scramble to pay it. She was released within 24 hours, but the arrest was public record. The charges were serious. That evening, Harold called. First time since Kenneth had confronted them with the evidence folder. Mom, we need to talk. Valerie made a terrible mistake. She was scared and she panicked. But Mom, arresting her isn't going to solve anything. Can we please talk about this? I didn't respond. Mom, please, I know you're angry, but we're still family. Can't we work this out? I spoke, calmly, clearly. Harold, Valerie tried to destroy evidence of your scheme to steal from me. She committed arson. She's facing criminal charges. There's nothing to work out. It's not a scheme. We were genuinely worried about you. You're $340,000 in debt. You owe a loan shark $80,000. You're drowning financially, and you thought you could solve it by taking guardianship over me and accessing my assets. Harold, that's not concern. That's theft. Silence from his end. How do you know about Victor? I know everything. I've known for months. I've been watching you, documenting everything, and waiting for you to show me exactly who you've become. Mom, if you know about Victor, then you understand we're in trouble. Real trouble. He's threatening us. We needed help. Then you should have asked for help, not tried to steal. Would you have helped if I'd asked? I thought about that honestly. I don't know, maybe, if you'd been honest about your situation and respectful in asking. But Harold, you didn't even try honesty. You went straight to manipulation and lies. That tells me everything I need to know about what you really think of me. We were desperate. And I'm protecting myself from desperate people who see me as a solution to their problems, instead of a person who deserves respect. I hung up. Kenneth had been listening. Mom, do you think he's actually dangerous? Like, would he physically hurt you to get what he needs? I don't think so, but I didn't think he'd try to have me declared incompetent either. I don't know what he's capable of anymore. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Harold, my son, the boy I'd raised. Where had I gone wrong? How had he become someone who could do this? Or was this not about my parenting at all? Was this about choices he'd made as an adult? Choices to value money over integrity, to see problems as things to manipulate away instead of face honestly. I didn't have answers, just sadness and uncertainty. At 2 a.m., my new security system alarm went off. Motion detected at the back door. Kenneth and I went to the security monitor. Someone was trying to pick the lock on my back door. Not Valerie this time, Harold. We watched on the camera as he worked at the lock with tools, clearly trying to break in. Kenneth called 911. Someone's breaking into my mother's house. We have them on security camera. The police arrived within 8 minutes. Harold was still at the back door when they pulled him away, arrested him for attempted burglary. Detective Shaw called me the next morning. Mrs. Crane, your son is claiming he was just checking on you, that he was worried because you weren't answering your phone. At 2 a.m., by picking my lock. That's what I told him. Mrs. Crane, combined with everything else, we're looking at a pattern of escalating behavior. The DA wants to bring charges for attempted elder abuse and financial exploitation. Harold could be looking at serious prison time. What about Victor Dupree, the loan shark? We're investigating him too. But Mrs. Crane, that's a separate matter. Harold's debts to Victor don't excuse what he's done to you. After the call, I sat thinking about what was happening. Harold arrested for attempted burglary. Valerie facing arson charges. Both of them in legal trouble because they'd tried to steal from me. Part of me felt vindicated. They'd shown exactly who they were, and now they were facing consequences. But part of me just felt empty. My son was going to prison. My family was destroyed. Kenneth sat down beside me. Mom, are you okay? No, but I will be. What happens now? Now I prepare for what comes next, because Harold and Valerie aren't going to stop. They're too desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. I was right about that, more right than I knew. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a man's voice, low, threatening, spoke. Mrs. Crane, my name is Victor Dupree. I believe you know who I am. Your son owes me a substantial amount of money he doesn't have. But you do. I think we should meet and discuss how you're going to help your son pay his debts. I'm not paying Harold's debts. I think you will. Because Mrs. Crane, I know where you live. I know you're 74. I know you live alone except for your younger son who stays with you sometimes. And I know that elderly people can have unfortunate accidents. Falls, break-ins, medical emergencies, tragedies. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. Harold owes me $127,000 now with accumulated interest and penalties. You're going to pay it, or you're going to have a very unfortunate accident. Do we understand each other? He hung up before I could respond. I sat holding the phone, my hands shaking. Not from fear, from rage. Harold had brought this into my life. A lone shark threatening me, using my age and vulnerability as leverage. I called Detective Shaw immediately, told him about Victor's call. "Mrs. Crane, that's extortion and terroristic threatening. We'll trace the call and add it to the case. But in the meantime, you need protection. Real protection." "What kind of protection?" "Private security. Someone who can stay with you 24/7 until we can arrest Victor and neutralize the threat." "I can't afford private security long-term." "Then we need to resolve this quickly. Mrs. Crane, I'm going to be honest. Victor Dupree is dangerous. He's suspected in 2 deaths of people who owed him money. We've never been able to prove it, but the pattern is there. You need to take his threat seriously." After the call, I sat with Kenneth and told him everything. "Mom, we're going to the police. Full protection, I don't care what it costs." "Kenneth, there might be another way." "What way?" I pulled out my phone, made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. My nephew, James, Kenneth's cousin, who worked for the FBI. "James, it's Aunt Miriam. I need your help, and I need it now." What I told James set off a chain of events that would not only protect me from Victor Dupree, but would expose something much bigger than I'd ever imagined. Something that connected Harold's debts to a criminal network that had been operating for years. And something that would finally show me the full scope of what my silence had protected me from discovering too late. But before James could mobilize help, before the FBI could act, something happened that changed everything. I received an email from Valerie, sent from a burner account, with a video attachment. When I opened it, I saw Harold, tied to a chair, beaten, blood on his face. And Victor Dupree standing behind him, holding a gun to his head. "Mrs. Crane," Victor's voice came through the video, "you have 24 hours to transfer $127,000 to the account I'm sending you. If you don't, your son dies. And then I come for you. The clock is ticking." Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I watched the video 3 times. Harold's face was swollen, his left eye nearly shut. Blood dripped from a cut above his eyebrow. But what struck me most was his expression. Not fear, not defiance, something else. Resignation, like he'd known this was coming, like he'd accepted it as the inevitable consequence of choices he'd made. Kenneth was on the phone with James before I could stop him. "We have a kidnapping. FBI needs to be involved now." I replayed the video one more time, studied it carefully, the background, the lighting, the sounds. Then I did something that surprised Kenneth. I called Detective Shaw. "I need you to come to my house immediately, and I need you to bring someone who knows video analysis." "Mrs. Crane, what's happening?" "Harold has been kidnapped, or that's what I'm supposed to believe. I need an expert to tell me if this video is real or staged." When Detective Shaw arrived with a video forensics specialist named Carla Ewan, I showed them the video. Carla watched it multiple times, enhanced certain sections, analyzed the metadata. After 20 minutes, she looked up. "This video was recorded 4 days ago, not today. The metadata shows it was edited, certain portions were cut and spliced. And Mrs. Crane, there's something else. The blood on your son's face is stage blood. It's the wrong viscosity, wrong color. This is theatrical makeup, not actual injury." "So it's fake." "The kidnapping might be real, but the video has been manipulated to make it look more urgent and dangerous than it actually is. Mrs. Crane, I think your son and this Victor person are working together." I sat back, processing that. Harold staged his own kidnapping to pressure me into paying his debts. Detective Shaw pulled up Victor Dupree's file on his tablet. "Mrs. Crane, Victor is dangerous, but he's also smart. He doesn't typically kidnap people. He uses psychological pressure and threats. Actually kidnapping someone would bring law enforcement attention he usually avoids." So Harold approached Victor with a plan: stage a kidnapping, pressure me to pay, split the money. That's my theory. Mrs. Crane, this isn't a rescue situation. This is another manipulation. Kenneth was furious. He's faking being kidnapped to extort Mom after everything else he's done. I thought about the video again, about Harold's expression, that resignation. Then I understood. He's not faking it because he wants to. He's faking it because Victor forced him to. Harold can't pay his debts. Victor can't kidnap him for real without legal consequences. So they made a deal. Harold pretends to be kidnapped. I pay the ransom thinking I'm saving my son, and they split the money. That's conspiracy to commit fraud and extortion, Detective Shaw said. Mrs. Crane, if you pay, you're funding a criminal enterprise. If you don't pay and Harold is actually in danger. He's not in danger, not the way the video suggests. Victor won't kill him. Harold is more valuable alive and useful than dead. But I think Harold might actually be with Victor, willingly, helping set this up. I pulled out my phone and sent a reply to the burner email address. I'm not paying. If Harold is actually in danger, call the police. If he's helping you extort me, tell him I know. The video is fake. The blood is makeup. You recorded this 4 days ago. I have FBI and local police involved. You have 24 hours to release Harold unharmed, or you're both facing federal kidnapping charges on top of everything else. I sent it, then I waited. 3 hours later, my phone rang. Harold's number. Mom, I'm okay, I'm home. There was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. You staged a kidnapping to extort money from me. I didn't, Mom. It wasn't like that. Victor had me make that video. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd hurt Valerie. I was trying to protect her. By lying to me. Again. Harold, I'm done with your lies. Mom, please. I'm sorry. We're desperate. Victor is going to kill us if we don't pay him. We need help. Then turn yourself in. Go to the police. Testify against Victor. Get protection. But Harold, I'm not giving you money. I'm not saving you from consequences you've earned. Mom, he'll kill us. Then you should have thought about that before you borrowed from a loan shark. Harold, I love you, but I can't fix this for you. You made these choices. You face these consequences. I hung up. Kenneth looked at me. Mom, what if Victor really does hurt him? Then Harold should go to the police. Kenneth, I can't keep rescuing him from his own decisions. That's what's enabled all of this. He's never faced real consequences because someone always bailated him out. That stops now. That evening, James arrived from the FBI regional office. He'd brought 2 other agents with him. Aunt Miriam, we need to talk about Victor Dupree. He's not just a lone shark. He's part of a larger operation we've been investigating for 2 years. Money laundering, extortion, several suspected homicides. Your nephew Harold's involvement has given us an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Harold can flip, testify against Victor, give us information about the operation. In exchange, we can offer him protection and reduce charges for his crimes against you. You want me to help Harold get a deal? We want to use Harold to bring down a criminal network. Mrs. Crane, Victor has hurt a lot of people. Elderly people, mostly. People who borrowed from him or whose family members borrowed from him. If we can get Harold to testify, we can stop Victor from hurting anyone else. I thought about that, about using Harold's situation to protect other people. What would Harold have to do? Wear a wire, meet with Victor. Get him on tape discussing the extortion, the staged kidnapping, the threats against you. Then testify in court about everything he knows about Victor's operation. And in exchange, reduced charges on the elder abuse and extortion charges against you. Possibly probation instead of prison time. Witness protection if Victor's associates pose a threat. I looked at James. What do you think I should do? I think Harold has hurt you terribly. I think he's made choices that deserve consequences. But I also think stopping Victor from hurting other elderly people is important. Aunt Miriam, this is your choice, not Harold's. He doesn't get to demand you help him, but you get to decide if you want to use this situation to protect others. I thought about Dorothy Marchetti from the previous case I'd heard about elderly people losing everything to people like Victor who preyed on desperation and fear. I'll agree to cooperate, but not to save Harold, to stop Victor from hurting anyone else. And Harold doesn't get a free pass. He still faces consequences for what he did to me. Fair enough. 2 days later, Harold wore a wire into a meeting with Victor. FBI surveillance teams were positioned around the meeting location, a warehouse Victor used for his operations. I listened to the audio feed from James's office, heard Harold's nervous voice, heard Victor's cold, calculating responses. Your mother didn't pay. That's disappointing. She knows about the video. Someone analyzed it. They know it was staged. Then we move to plan B. We actually hurt you. Make it real. Send her photos. She'll pay to make it stop. I don't want to do that. You don't have a choice. You owe me $127,000. Either your mother pays or you pay with your body. A finger first, then a hand. Then we see how much a son is really worth to his mother. There has to be another way. There isn't. Harold, you borrowed money you couldn't repay. You tried to steal from your own mother and failed. You staged a kidnapping and she saw through it. You're out of options. Now we do this the hard way. The FBI moved in before Victor could carry out his threat. Arrested him on extortion, terroristic threatening, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and a dozen other charges. Harold was taken into protective custody. The wire had captured everything. James called me afterward. We have him. Victor is going away for a long time. And Aunt Miriam, we found evidence connecting him to 4 other cases of elderly victims whose family members borrowed from him. You helping us prosecute him is going to save lives. What about Harold? He'll testify. In exchange, the DA is recommending 3 years probation and restitution to you for the attempted exploitation. No prison time, but he'll have a record, and he'll be paying you back every dollar he cost you in legal fees and damages. 3 years probation, restitution, no prison time. Part of me wanted him to face more, wanted him to serve time for what he'd tried to do to me. But another part, the part that had watched silently while they revealed themselves, that part understood something important. Harold facing consequences wasn't about revenge. It was about truth and accountability. And if those consequences included testifying against Victor and preventing other elderly people from being victimized, then something good could come from all this pain. That evening, Kenneth and I sat in my quiet house, the security cameras recording. The locks changed. The shed still a burned shell in the backyard. Mom, it's over. Victor's arrested. Harold's facing charges. Valerie's facing charges. You won. I didn't win, Kenneth. I survived. There's a difference. What happens now? Now I rebuild, fix the shed, continue living my life, and decide what kind of relationship, if any, I want with Harold after all this. 2 weeks later, Valerie's trial for arson began. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, accelerant purchases, motive. She tried to claim she'd been acting under duress, that Harold had pressured her into destroying the shed, that she was a victim too. The jury didn't believe her, convicted her on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison and 5 years probation. Harold testified against her, testified against Victor, cooperated fully in exchange for his probation deal. And through all of it I watched, silent, observing, documenting. Not participating in their drama, not rescuing, not enabling, just witnessing the consequences of choices they'd made. 1 month after Valerie's sentencing, Harold asked to meet me. Supervised meeting at a neutral location with Kenneth present. I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. We met at a coffee shop. Harold looked thinner, older, beaten down by everything that had happened. Mom, I wanted to say something. I wanted to apologize. Not because I want forgiveness or because I expect anything from you, just because you deserve to hear it. I waited. I saw you as a problem to solve instead of a person to respect. I saw your money as a resource I was entitled to. I convinced myself that taking guardianship was helping you when really I was helping myself. And when that didn't work, I escalated, kept lying, kept manipulating, brought dangerous people into your life." He paused, seemed to be struggling with what to say next. "Mom, when you went silent, when you just watched us without defending yourself, I thought you were confused. Broken. That's what I told myself to justify what I was doing. But you weren't confused. You were seeing clearly. You were documenting everything and waiting for us to show you who we really were. And we did." "Yes, you did. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even think I want it right now because I'm not sure I've earned the right to want it. But Mom, I needed you to know you were right about everything. The silence, the documentation, refusing to enable or rescue, all of it. You saved yourself from me." "I know. Do you think someday we could have a relationship again? Not now, maybe not for years, but eventually." I thought about that question carefully. "I don't know, Harold. Right now, I can't trust you. You tried to destroy me to save yourself. That's not something I can forgive quickly or easily. Maybe someday. If you do the work to become someone trustworthy, if you face what you've done honestly and change. But Harold, that's years away. Right now, I just need distance from you." "I understand." After Harold left, Kenneth looked at me. "Do you really think you'll ever forgive him?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to because he's my son. But part of me knows that forgiveness without real change just enables more harm. Kenneth, I learned something important through all this." "What?" "That watching silently, refusing to react the way people expect, gives you information you'd never get otherwise. Harold thought my silence meant weakness. Really, it meant I was seeing clearly for the first time, seeing who he really was when he thought I was too confused to notice." "Are you glad you stayed silent?" "Yes, because if I'd defended myself immediately, if I'd argued and explained and tried to prove I was competent, they'd have twisted it all, made me look defensive and irrational. The silence gave them nothing to work with, nothing to manipulate, and that drove them to reveal themselves completely." 3 months after Victor's arrest, I was contacted by a journalist named Rebecca Torrance. She was writing a story about Victor's criminal network and the elderly victims his operation had targeted. "Mrs. Crane, your case is unique. You're the only victim who saw through the scheme and built evidence against your own family member before they could succeed. Would you be willing to talk about how you did it?" I agreed to an interview, not for publicity, but because I thought other elderly people needed to hear that silence could be strategic, that refusing to perform the expected emotional response could be powerful. The article ran in a major newspaper. How one woman's silence exposed a criminal network. It told my story, the Thanksgiving announcement, the silent observation, the documentation, the fake kidnapping, Victor's arrest, everything. After it published, I started getting calls from other elderly people facing similar situations, from families worried about their parents, from advocates working on elder abuse prevention. They all wanted to know the same thing. How did you stay silent? How did you not defend yourself? How did you watch your family turn on you without breaking? I told them all the same thing. I stayed silent because anything I said would be twisted. I watched because I needed to see the truth. I documented because I knew I'd need proof. And I didn't break because breaking would have given them what they wanted, evidence that I was weak. 6 months after everything ended, Kenneth helped me rebuild the shed. We made it bigger, more secure, fireproof materials this time. And in that shed, I stored new documentation, not just old papers, but evidence of what I'd survived, the evaluations proving my competence, the court documents from Valerie's trial, the news articles about Victor's conviction, the video analysis showing the fake kidnapping. All of it, a record of what happened when I refused to be what they needed me to be. When I refused to cry, or beg, or break. When I chose silence and observation instead. 1 year after Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner again. Just Kenneth this time, and my sister who'd supported me throughout everything, and Helen, the neighbor who'd documented the fire and provided security footage. Small gathering, quiet, peaceful. No dramatic announcements, no manufactured concern, no accusations of decline. Just people who'd proven themselves trustworthy, who'd stood by me when my own son had tried to destroy me. After dinner, Kenneth asked, "Mom, do you have any regrets about how you handled everything?" "No, I wish it hadn't been necessary. I wish Harold had been the son I thought he was. But I don't regret staying silent. Don't regret documenting. Don't regret refusing to enable his schemes." "What did you learn from all this?" I thought about that carefully. I learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Just watch. Just observe. Just refuse to participate in the role someone else has written for you. That must have been hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Watching my family turn on me and not defending myself. Letting them believe I was confused and weak. Sitting in silence while they discussed taking everything from me. But it worked. It did, because that silence gave me space to think clearly, to plan, to build my case without them knowing what I was doing. Kenneth, if I'd reacted immediately, if I'd argued and defended and tried to prove my competence, I'd have been playing their game. The silence meant I was playing a different game, one they didn't understand until it was too late. That night, alone in my house with new locks and security cameras and a fireproof shed, I thought about everything that had happened. Harold was on probation, paying restitution, living in a small apartment, working a basic job, slowly rebuilding a life he'd destroyed through greed and desperation. Valerie was in prison, 18 months for arson, her career ruined, her reputation destroyed. Victor was in federal prison, 20 years, his criminal network dismantled, other elderly victims protected from his schemes. And I was here, 74, independent, competent, living exactly the life I'd fought to protect. Not because I'd been loud or aggressive or confrontational, because I'd been silent, strategic, observant. Because I'd understood something crucial. When people expect tears, silence is power. When people expect defense, observation is strength. When people expect you to break, refusing to break is victory. They'd expected me to cry when Valerie made her Thanksgiving announcement. Expected me to beg when they threatened guardianship. Expected me to panic when Harold staged his kidnapping. Expected me to pay when Victor made his threats. I'd given them nothing but silence and observation. And that silence had protected me, exposed them, and ultimately destroyed their schemes. Not through force, through patience, through clarity, through refusing to be what they needed me to be. I'd watched my family turn on me without saying a word, and I'd let it happen. Because letting it happen meant letting them reveal themselves completely, meant gathering evidence they didn't know I was collecting, meant understanding the full scope of what I was facing before I acted. And when I finally did act, when I stopped watching and started moving, I had everything I needed to protect myself completely. The silence hadn't been weakness, it had been preparation. The watching hadn't been passive, it had been strategic. And the letting it happen hadn't been surrender. It had been the patience to wait for the right moment to show them exactly who I really was. Not the confused, declining elderly woman they needed me to be, but the sharp, competent, strategic woman I'd always been. The woman who'd survived by refusing to perform, by choosing silence over tears, by watching them turn on me and letting it happen because letting it happen gave me power they never saw coming. They thought I had nothing left, that grief and age and isolation had made me weak. They were wrong. I had silence, I had observation, I had patience, I had strategic thinking. And I had the willingness to watch my family destroy themselves while I documented every step. That was enough, more than enough. It was everything. 2 years after Thanksgiving, I received a letter from Harold. Prison mail, though he wasn't in prison, just using the same kind of stationery from his probation check-ins. Mom, I've been in therapy for 18 months. Court-ordered at first, but I've continued on my own, working on understanding why I became someone who could try to steal from his own mother. My therapist says I saw you as an obstacle, not a person. You had something I needed, and I convinced myself I was entitled to it, that taking it was solving a problem, not committing a crime. But Mom, watching you stay silent, Watching you refuse to react the way I expected, it broke something in me. Not immediately, not during the schemes, but after, when I realized you'd been documenting everything, building your case, protecting yourself from me. You stayed silent because you saw me clearly. You saw what I'd become before I could admit it to myself. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know the silence worked, not just to protect you, to teach me, to show me who I'd become by revealing how I acted when I thought you were too weak to stop me. I'm grateful for the silence, grateful you didn't enable or rescue, grateful you let me face consequences. It's the only thing that could have saved me from myself. Thank you, Harold. I read the letter twice. Then I filed it with the other documentation, part of the story, part of the record. I didn't write back, not yet, maybe not ever. Because the silence had served its purpose. It had protected me, exposed them, taught lessons that words never could. And sometimes, silence was a complete response all on its own. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. 3 years after Thanksgiving, I was invited to speak at a conference on elder abuse prevention. The organizers had read Rebecca Torrance's article and wanted me to share my story with advocates, social workers, and law enforcement. I almost declined. Speaking publicly about what Harold and Valerie had done felt like exposing family shame. But then I thought about the calls I'd received from other elderly people facing similar situations. People who needed to hear that staying silent could be strategic, not weak. I accepted. The conference was in a hotel ballroom, about 200 people. I stood at the podium looking out at faces of people who worked every day to protect vulnerable elderly people from exploitation. My name is Miriam Crane. 3 years ago, my daughter-in-law stood up at my Thanksgiving table and announced to 23 family members that I was losing my mind. My son backed her up, and I didn't say a single word to defend myself. I paused, watching the audience lean forward. That silence saved my life, not because staying quiet made the problem go away, but because it gave me time to see clearly what I was actually facing. And what I was facing was worse than I'd imagined. I told them everything. The manufactured forgetfulness incidents, the public Thanksgiving accusation, the coordinated campaign to establish incompetence, the financial desperation Harold was hiding, the loan shark, the threats, the arson, the staged kidnapping. But I focused most on the silence, on how refusing to perform the expected emotional response had protected me and exposed them. When Valerie made her announcement, everyone expected me to cry or argue or defend myself. If I'd done any of those things, they'd have used my emotional response as evidence of instability. See how defensive she gets? That's not rational behavior. But when I stayed silent, when I just walked away without a word, they couldn't twist it. They couldn't claim I was being irrational or emotional or confused. They could only scramble to explain why someone they just accused of incompetence was responding with such calculated control. A woman in the front row raised her hand. But wasn't the silence difficult? Didn't you want to defend yourself? It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Every instinct screamed at me to argue, to prove I was competent, to make them take back what they'd said. But I'd learned something important years ago in a completely different context. When someone is building a case against you, anything you say can and will be used to support their narrative. The only way to win is to refuse to play their game. After the speech, dozens of people approached me. Social workers who'd seen similar patterns. Adult children worried about their parents. Elderly people who'd experienced family exploitation. One woman, probably in her 80s, gripped my hand tightly. My granddaughter is trying to get guardianship over me, says I can't manage my money anymore. But I can. I've been managing it fine for 60 years. Should I stay silent like you did? Not exactly like I did. Every situation is different. But what I learned is this: don't defend yourself to people building a case against you. Defend yourself to people who can actually help: doctors, attorneys, advocates. Get evaluations proving your competence. Document everything they do. Build your own case while they're building theirs. And don't give them ammunition by being emotional or reactive when they expect it. She nodded. So silence with them, but action everywhere else. Exactly. Over the following months, I became an informal advisor to several organizations working on elder abuse prevention. I reviewed their materials. I talked to their staff. I shared what I'd learned. And I kept receiving calls from people facing similar situations. Adult children pressuring parents to sign over power of attorney. Families claiming incompetence to gain access to assets. Coordinated campaigns of manufactured evidence. Each time I gave the same advice. Document everything, get independent evaluations, don't defend yourself to your accusers, and understand that silence can be strategic. 4 years after Thanksgiving, Harold's probation ended. He'd completed all the terms, paid full restitution. It had taken him every dollar he earned from his basic job, but he'd paid it all. Completed therapy. Testified fully in Victor's trial and in cases against 3 other members of Victor's network. He called me the day his probation ended. "Mom, I'm officially done with probation. I wanted to let you know." "Congratulations." I also wanted to ask, do you think we could have coffee sometime? Just to talk. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a relationship, just one conversation. I thought about it for several days, then I agreed. One coffee, public place. Kenneth comes with me. We met at the same coffee shop where we'd met 3 years earlier. Harold looked different. Older, yes, but something else had changed, something in his eyes. He looked like someone who'd actually faced what he'd done instead of running from it. "Mom, Kenneth, thank you for meeting me. I know I don't deserve your time, but I wanted to tell you something I've learned in therapy." We waited. The therapist made me write letters, not to send just for myself, letters to everyone I'd hurt. To you, Mom, to Kenneth, to the other victims in Victor's network, to myself, writing about what I'd done and why I'd done it. He pulled out a folded paper from his pocket, worn like it had been read many times. "This is the letter I wrote to you. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's one part I want to share because it's the most honest thing I've ever written." He unfolded the paper. "Read a section near the middle. When you stayed silent at Thanksgiving, I thought I'd won. I thought you were too confused or broken to defend yourself. I told Valerie, she's not even fighting back. This is going to be easier than we thought. But you weren't broken. You were documenting. You were building your case while I was busy celebrating what I thought was your weakness. And that silence, that refusal to perform the emotional response I expected, it exposed me completely. If you'd cried or argued, I'd have used it against you. But you gave me nothing, just calm observation, just strategic withdrawal, just the space to hang myself with my own actions. That silence was the most devastating thing you could have done, not because it hurt me, but because it revealed me, showed me exactly who I'd become when I thought no one was watching closely enough to stop me. He refolded the letter. "Mom, I can't undo what I did. I can't give back the year you spent fighting me instead of living your life. I can't erase the fear I caused or the damage I did to our family. But I wanted you to know, I finally understand what the silence meant. It wasn't weakness. It was strength I was too blind to recognize." I looked at this man who was my son, who'd tried to destroy me, who'd brought loan sharks and criminals into my life, who'd faced consequences and apparently learned from them. "Harold, I appreciate you telling me this. I appreciate that you've done the work to understand what you did, but I need you to understand something too." "What?" "I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago. The woman who sat at that Thanksgiving table had never imagined her own son would try to steal from her, had never imagined she'd need to document her own family building a case against her. That woman was naive about what family meant." I paused, making sure he was hearing me. "The woman I am now understands that family is about behavior, not biology. That love without respect is worthless. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is let them face consequences without rescue. Harold, I'm not that forgiving mother anymore. I'm someone who learned to protect herself by staying silent, and I'm not going to unlearn that lesson just because you've completed therapy. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking if someday, maybe years from now, we might be able to build something new, not what we had before, something honest, based on who we actually are now, not who we wish we were. Maybe, but Harold, that's not something I can promise. Right now, I can acknowledge that you've changed. I can appreciate the work you've done, but I can't trust you, and I don't know if I ever will again. That's fair. After Harold left, Kenneth and I sat finishing our coffee. Mom, do you think you'll ever forgive him? I don't know. Part of me wants to because he seems genuinely remorseful, but part of me knows that remorse doesn't erase harm. Kenneth, he tried to have me declared incompetent. He brought a lone shark into my life who threatened to kill me. He staged a kidnapping to extort money from me. Those aren't things you forgive because someone completed probation and went to therapy. So you'll never have a relationship with him. I didn't say never. I said I don't know. Kenneth, what I learned through all this is that I don't have to decide everything right now. I don't have to forgive or not forgive. I can just exist in the uncertainty. Can acknowledge he's changing while also acknowledging I'm not ready to trust that change yet. That's very measured. That's what silence taught me, that I don't have to react immediately, that I can observe and wait and decide on my own timeline, not when someone else demands it. 5 years after Thanksgiving, I received an unexpected letter from Valerie. She'd been released from prison 6 months earlier after serving her full sentence. Miriam, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect anything from you, but my therapist says I need to write it anyway. Part of making amends is acknowledging harm even when the person you harmed doesn't want to hear it. I burned your shed. I destroyed decades of your documents because Harold convinced me it was necessary to protect our case for guardianship. But I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew I was destroying evidence of your competence because we couldn't prove incompetence any other way. I've spent 5 years thinking about that choice, about what kind of person destroys someone else's life history to steal from them, about how I convinced myself I was helping my family when I was actually committing crimes. Miriam, you staying silent after Thanksgiving, it confused me. I expected you to argue, to defend yourself, to give us something to use against you. When you didn't, I panicked. That panic led to worse and worse decisions. The arson, the staged kidnapping, all of it was desperation because your silence gave us nothing to work with. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just acknowledging your silence was powerful. It protected you from people who were trying to hurt you, and it revealed us completely. Showed everyone exactly what we were willing to do when we thought you were too weak to stop us. I hope you're living well. I hope the shed has been rebuilt. I hope you found peace after everything we put you through. I don't deserve a response. I'm not asking for one. I just needed you to know that I finally understand what we tried to take from you, and I'm sorry. Valerie. I read the letter once. Then I filed it with all the other documentation, part of the record, part of the story. I didn't respond, didn't feel the need to. The letter was for Valerie's healing, not mine. I'd already healed by building a life that didn't include people who tried to destroy me. 6 years after Thanksgiving, I was 79, still living independently in my house, still managing my own finances, still sharp and competent and exactly who I'd always been. The rebuilt shed stood in my backyard, fireproof, secure, filled with documentation of everything that had happened and everything I'd survived. Kenneth visited regularly. We had dinners, talked about his life, about mine, about everything except Harold and Valerie unless I brought them up. I attended monthly meetings of a support group I'd helped establish, elderly people dealing with family exploitation. I shared my story, answered questions, helped people understand that silence could be strategy, not surrender. And I lived, not the life I'd expected at 79, but a life I'd fought for, protected, built on my own terms after people I'd loved had tried to tear it down. One evening, sitting in my living room where everything had started, I thought about that Thanksgiving, about Valerie's announcement, about the silence I'd chosen instead of defense. That silence had seemed like weakness in the moment, like giving up, like letting them win. But it had been the opposite. It had been refusing to play their game, refusing to give them the emotional reaction they could twist, refusing to perform the role they'd written for me. And in that refusal, I'd found power I'd never known I had. The power to observe without reacting, to document without confronting, to protect myself by giving them nothing to use against me. They'd expected tears, expected defense, expected me to break under the pressure of public accusation and family betrayal. I'd given them silence, and that silence had protected me, exposed them, and ultimately destroyed their schemes. Not through confrontation, through patience, through strategic non-engagement, through understanding that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. I watched my family turn on me without saying a word, and I let it happen. Because letting it happen meant letting them reveal themselves completely, meant gathering evidence while they thought I was too confused to notice, meant building my defense while they built their false case. And when I finally spoke, when I finally presented my evidence and told my truth, I had everything I needed to protect myself completely. The silence hadn't been the whole strategy. It had been the foundation, the space that gave me time to see clearly, think strategically, and act decisively. 7 years after Thanksgiving, Harold asked to meet again, this time without Kenneth, just the two of us. I agreed because I was curious, because 7 years of consistent behavior might mean something, because I was strong enough now to meet him without fear. We met at a park, sat on a bench near a pond. Mom, I'm getting married. To someone I met in group therapy, someone who knows everything about what I did and chose to be with me anyway. Congratulations. I wanted to tell you in person, and to ask, I'm not inviting you to the wedding. I know better than to expect that, but I wanted you to know it's happening, and that you're not invited not because I don't want you there, but because I know you wouldn't want to be there and I'm respecting that. Thank you for understanding. We sat in silence for a moment, watching ducks on the pond. Mom, can I ask you something? Go ahead. When you stayed silent that Thanksgiving, when you walked out without defending yourself, did you already know what I was planning? Or were you just protecting yourself from what you suspected? I thought about how to answer honestly. I suspected something was wrong. You'd been acting strange for months, asking odd questions, visiting more than usual, but I didn't know the full scope. The debt, Victor, the guardianship plan, I just knew that something felt off, and I knew that defending myself would be playing into whatever you were planning. So the silence was instinctive. At first, then it became strategic. The more you escalated, the more I understood I needed to stay quiet and document instead of engage and defend. Harold, if I'd argued with you at that Thanksgiving table, what would you have done? He thought about that. I'd have pointed to your defensiveness as proof you were unstable. See how she overreacts? That's not normal behavior. We'd planned for that, had responses ready for every defense you might make. But you didn't have a response for silence. No, we didn't. The silence broke our script. We didn't know what to do when you just didn't engage. That's why it worked, because you expected me to play the role you'd assigned. Confused elderly woman who either can't defend herself or defends herself inappropriately. But I refused to play either version. I just opted out of the entire performance. And we panicked. Yes, and panic makes people sloppy, make mistakes, reveal their true intentions. Harold, your escalation from guardianship threats to arson to staged kidnapping, that was panic. Each step showed me more clearly what I was dealing with. He was quiet for a long moment. Mom, do you think you'll ever trust me again? I don't know. Right now, I can acknowledge you've changed, can appreciate that you've done hard work, can accept that you're building a new life. But trust, that's something you earn through consistent behavior over time. And 7 years might not be enough time. Ask me again in 10 years. That's fair. After Harold left, I sat on the bench watching the pond, thinking about trust, about time, about whether some things, once broken, ever fully repair. I didn't have answers, just the certainty that I didn't have to decide today, that I could exist in the uncertainty without pressure to resolve it. That was another thing the silence had taught me, that I didn't owe anyone immediate resolution, that I could take my time, observe, wait, decide on my own timeline. 8 years after Thanksgiving, I turned 80. Kenneth threw me a party, small gathering, friends from the support group, neighbors who'd supported me, Helen, who'd captured the arson on camera, Rebecca, the journalist who'd told my story. No Harold, no Valerie, just people who'd proven trustworthy through actions, not words. During the party, Rebecca pulled me aside. "Miriam, I'm writing a follow-up article about what happened after the original story, about how you've helped other elderly people facing exploitation. Would you be willing to talk about what you've learned?" "What specifically?" "About silence as strategy, about when to engage and when to withdraw, about how you knew the difference." I thought about that question. I'll talk, but Rebecca, the truth is I didn't always know the difference. Sometimes I stayed silent when I should have spoken. Sometimes I spoke when silence would have been better. What I learned was to pay attention to my instincts. When something felt like a trap, like they wanted me to react a certain way, I stayed silent. When something felt like an opportunity to build my case, I acted. So it was more instinct than strategy. At first, then it became both. The instinct told me when to be silent. The strategy told me what to do with the information I gathered during that silence. Rebecca's follow-up article ran on the anniversary of the original piece. 8 years later, how one woman's silence continues to protect others. It talked about the support group, about the dozens of people I'd advised, about the policy changes some advocacy organizations had made based on my experience. But mostly it talked about the power of strategic non-engagement, about refusing to perform expected roles, about watching and documenting instead of defending and explaining. The article ended with a quote from me. "They expected tears. I gave them silence. They expected defense. I gave them observation. They expected me to break. I refused. And in that refusal, I found a power I'd never known I had. The power to see clearly, act strategically, and protect myself completely. Not through confrontation, through patience." After the article published, I got more calls, more invitations to speak, more people wanting to understand how to protect themselves from family members who saw them as resources instead of people. I said yes to some, no to others, chose carefully which opportunities were worth my time and energy. Because that was another thing I'd learned, that I didn't have to say yes to everything. That no was a complete sentence. That protecting my peace meant being selective about where I invested my attention. 9 years after Thanksgiving, I was invited to testify before a state legislative committee considering new elder abuse protection laws. They wanted input from someone who'd experienced it firsthand. I testified for 20 minutes, told my story concisely, focused on what had worked and what hadn't in the existing legal framework. "The laws protected me eventually," I told the committee. "But I had to be wealthy enough to afford good attorneys, educated enough to know what documentation I needed, and mentally sharp enough to outmaneuver my own family. What about elderly people who don't have those advantages? What about people who can't afford attorneys or don't understand the legal system? They're the ones who need protection most, and the current laws don't reach them." I made specific recommendations. Mandatory waiting periods before guardianship petitions could be filed. Free legal assistance for elderly people facing exploitation. Stronger penalties for family members who abuse positions of trust. Better training for law enforcement on recognizing elder abuse patterns. Some of my recommendations were incorporated into the final bill. Not all, but enough that I felt like the testimony had mattered. 10 years after Thanksgiving, Harold asked to meet again. "Mom, it's been 10 years. You said to ask again in 10 years about trust, so I'm asking." We met at the same park bench, where we'd met 3 years earlier. "Harold, tell me about the past 10 years, not the highlights, the actual work you've done." He told me about therapy ongoing, not just the court-mandated sessions. about the amends he'd made to other victims in Victor's network, about the financial counseling he'd sought to understand his relationship with money, about the marriage he'd built on honesty instead of secrets. "I can't undo what I did," he said, "but I can show you through consistent behavior that I'm different now. Mom, I'm not asking for the relationship we had before. I'm asking if we can build something new, something honest, based on who we actually are, not who we were." I thought about his question for a long time, about trust, about forgiveness, about whether some wounds heal and others just scar. "I can't trust you the way I did before," I finally said. "That trust is gone and it's not coming back. But Harold, maybe we can build a different kind of relationship. One based on clear boundaries and realistic expectations, where I don't trust you with my finances or my welfare, but I can trust you to be honest about who you are and what you're capable of." What would that look like? Occasional meetings like this, supervised at first, with clear boundaries about what we discuss and what we don't. No access to my home or my financial information. No expectations of traditional mother-son dynamics. Just two people who share history trying to build something new that acknowledges the past without being defined by it. "I'll take it. Whatever you're willing to give, I'll take it." We met quarterly after that. Coffee or walks in the park. Conversations that were careful but gradually became more genuine, building something new on the ruins of what had been destroyed. It wasn't reconciliation. It was something more honest. Acknowledgement, acceptance, connection without the illusion of full restoration. 12 years after Thanksgiving, I was 81, still independent, still sharp, still exactly who I'd fought to remain. I sat in my living room one evening thinking about everything that had happened since that Thanksgiving dinner, about the silence that had saved me, about the family that had tried to destroy me, about the life I'd built in the aftermath. I'd lost things, the illusion of family harmony, the naive trust I'd once had, the simple relationship with my son that would never exist again. But I'd gained things too, clarity about who people really were, strength I'd never known I possessed, the ability to protect myself through strategic silence instead of reactive defense. And I'd learned the most important lesson of all, that refusing to perform the expected role is sometimes the most powerful choice you can make. They'd expected tears at Thanksgiving, expected defense, expected me to break. I'd given them silence, and in that silence, I'd found everything I needed to survive. Not just survive, thrive, build, protect, teach others. The silence hadn't been an ending. It had been a beginning. The start of understanding that I didn't have to play by their rules, that I could write my own script, make my own choices, protect myself in ways they'd never anticipated. I watched my family turn on me without saying a word, and I let it happen. Because letting it happen gave me the space to see clearly, act strategically, and ultimately protect myself completely. That was the power of silence, not weakness, not surrender, not passivity. Power, pure, strategic, devastating power. The power to refuse the role assigned to you. The power to observe without reacting. The power to protect yourself by giving manipulators nothing to manipulate. And that power, discovered in the worst moment of my life, had become the foundation of everything I'd built since. I was 81, living exactly the life I'd fought for, protected by boundaries I'd learned to set, supported by people who'd proven trustworthy through actions. And I'd done it all by learning one crucial lesson. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is watch your family turn on you, without saying a word, and let it happen. Because letting it happen meant letting them reveal themselves. And in that revelation, finding everything you needed to protect yourself completely. That was my story, not a story of a confused elderly woman who needed rescue, but a story of a sharp, strategic woman who protected herself by refusing to be what others needed her to be, who stayed silent when they expected noise, who observed when they expected reaction, who won by refusing to play their game. That was the power of silence, and it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.